Are we going to enter into an era of massive defense spending that's going to last well into the end of this decade? Many of you may be too young to remember the massive defense spending that the United States, but also many other members of the NATO world undertook during the 80s that kind of stopped around the fall of the Berlin Wall in the early 90s. But before that particular period, really since the end of World War II, the United States and the NATO partners went on I want to say maybe a 40, almost 50-year run of spending a massive amount of money on defense capability, right? Was classified as defense capability. And as a result, defense companies became really, really good investments because we understood that they were going to continue to get orders from the United States government, but also from world governments to fulfill weapons contracts. Then we had a little bit of a lull in the 90s. It came back again during the war on terrorism, right? And then we had a little bit of a lull, and then we're right back almost to where people think we're getting ready to start on a new run. And this is something that you really want to consider, because if we're getting ready to go into an era, what some people are going to call a new Cold War, where our NATO partners and the United States are going to start spending a lot of money for defense capability because of threats that they think are going to be coming out of the East. It can put defense contractors in a really good position because they know now that they're going to consistently be getting orders for new weapons to not only be manufactured, but also to be designed. They're going to get contracts for future weapons that they haven't even made yet. And it can put you in a position as a defense investor to be very profitable, and many of the defense companies, or a basket of the defense companies, can outpace the overall indexes. So let's go into this article, and this is from the Financial Times. It's dated April 22nd, 2022. We talk about defense stocks beat global market on expectations of higher spending, and even though analysts cautioned that it would take time for new orders to impact earnings, ESG investors reassess the sector. Defense stocks have outpaced the global market this year in almost a decade. Defense stocks have outpaced the global market this year by the most in almost a decade on expectations of higher military spending by Western governments, and as ethically minded investors reevaluate the sector. So for a very long time, people felt like it was bad ethics or bad morals to invest in defense, because essentially you're putting money behind companies who are designed really to figure out how to try to kill people more effectively. However, the desire to generate a yield on capital can be so great that people may just overlook that. An MSI index tracking aerospace and defense shares has beaten a broader gauge of worldwide equities by 17 percentage points in dollar terms since early January. That outperformance has only occurred two other times since 1999. And we understand that Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24th have fueled expectations of new government orders, higher revenues, and stronger profits for companies in the defense sector. Now, one of the biggest challenges is that many of these orders are pulling on existing inventory, right? What we want to find out is that, does this movement or momentum have legs that are going to last a few years? What we need is the inventory stores to be extinguished or to be dropped down very low, and that now create a demand for new inventory and new manufacturing because of a consistent demand for these inventory of these weapons. It can amaze you how many weapons we have just warehoused. Like, it'll blow your mind if you really understood that. Therefore, we need that inventory to start to be pulled away. And then once that inventory starts to get pulled away, it can create a necessity to demand more inventory, because the goal is to always make sure you really got more weapons than you ever need. The United States, UK, and other allies have pledged significant sums in military assistance to Ukraine. We've sent hundreds of anti-tank missiles, drones, ammunition. The U.S. has offered more than $3 billion, including a new $800 million aid package that did get announced last Thursday. That includes heavy artillery and tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition. However, most of the weapons so far have come from existing government stockpiles. We have not seen an increase in orders or contracts or recognition of the need to act quickly, and that's what we talked about before. If this has legs, it'll start pulling on inventory so much that it create a demand now to make sure that we replenish our inventory. Then it just becomes a feedback mechanism. The longer this issue goes on in Ukraine, the more people in Europe feel a need to arm themselves heavier. We're talking about Germany now claims that they're going to start building out their military. I think that's going to be a big mistake, but they're going to let them do that. If Japan now decides, because of the issues with China, they may want to build out their military even more. If Taiwan decides, the United States is one of the biggest defense contractors for the whole world. We build weapons that the whole world uses. And as we can weaken Russia, we can make it to where Russia can't build weapons that the whole world uses. And it's a moneymaker. Selling people weapons has always been a big moneymaker in the world, not the modern world, since the beginning of time, right? People need weapons to kill other people, and they will buy weapons for that, right? And they will spend pretty much whatever you charge if they feel like their desire or their need to kill people is so great. They pretty much, you have almost what we call an inelastic product, right? Therefore, from an investor in the defense space, you want to understand that this issue inside the Ukraine, but also in Central Europe and Eastern Europe, continues to go on farther and farther and farther and more and longer, it can make it to where defense companies can start looking really attractive as a place to get yield, as long as you don't have a moral issue with investing in companies that make weapons to kill people. And so that's pretty much going to be the extent of this article. I would encourage you to read a little bit more into it. And we talked about this on an earlier video, and I may link that in this video about how we believe that the issue with Afghanistan would create a run on defense companies, because the United States, for whatever reason, is always in conflict with somebody. There's never a time in which they're not in conflict with somebody, and they can't ever create a need to where either they have to use the weapons or they have to send weapons to somebody else. And what it does is it creates a business case or a economic incentive for us to always have a conflict, so our defense contractors can find ways to drive new revenue into their country, because the $800 million aid package is taxpayer money that is going to defense contractors to supply weapons to a particular situation, right? So the defense contractors get the $800 million. The money's already been earmarked for that, right? So that's what people got to understand. So if you got any questions, hit me up in the comments. David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. I'll talk to you later.